Well, hi there, Doug. How are you?
Polly, how you going?
Very well. Just
I
came
got to
back.
get my Australian language in there. How you going?
Good. I've just been fishing. Just got back from
Hi.
fishing for Easter.
Nice.
What do you do in Canada at Easter time?
Well, we hope that the weather is nice. It's spring and it was nice this weekend. What do we do? We have fish on Good Friday. You have an Easter egg hunt on Sundays, eat lots of chocolate, and then you go back to work on Monday. Some people go to church. Depends on where you come from or what you believe, I guess. So, but it was a nice weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, here in the Northern Territory, a lot of people go fishing
Okay.
because normally it takes, well, in Catherine, it takes a good 3 hours to get to a good fishing spot. So you normally go and camp and do a bit of camping. We camped on our boat with
Uh-huh.
with another boat of people, of my sisters. Yeah.
And so, since it's Good Friday and you're fishing, do you ever see that guy walking across the water inviting you to step out of the boat?
No, we,
No.
we just pray that he turns up so that we can catch like the big fish.
That's
I wanted to catch,
right.
yeah, I wanted to catch the meatery,
That's
like
right.
1 meter long. The biggest I got was 91 centimeters, so 3 foot for you. So,
Wow. Wow.
yeah,
Good. That's
fun.
good. That's fun.
Yes, and we did have fish on Friday, so we did some of that.
There you go. So you were successful.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So everybody that's watching, Doug and I met in Toronto in 2019, before the pandemic was even a thought. And Doug used to work for Bob. Do you want to tell us a bit about that, Doug? How you got started there?
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in business for probably, I guess, I don't know, 20 some years. I mean, I'd done pretty well, but like you, and if you're watching, I felt like I could be doing better. I just always thought there was more, and I thought I could do better. And I hit a point where I was struggling again because I always struggled in a couple areas of my life. Once I figured out business, I was very successful that way. But internally, I wasn't feeling all that good. Nobody really knew it, but anyway, I happened to watch The Secret one day, and Bob came on the screen, and I remember him because when I first got into business in 1989, late '89, I just got into business. I went bankrupt, failed right away, and there was a ticket to a seminar. It was called "You Were Born Rich" with Bob Proctor. I didn't know who he was. I went to that event, but I'd forgotten all about it. I mean, so '89 through till now, it's I guess 2013, and I'm watching The Secret. And I download the book, I get on his email list, and I get an email to get into a coaching program. I thought, I want to be coached by this guy. And so I got into a coaching program with Bob. And then I thought, things were changing so fast for me. And I was learning stuff I didn't really know about around mindset and self-image and just really, how our mind works. I didn't know my mind was a machine and it directed my brain and my nervous system. And so anyway, I wanted to start teaching it to people because my life was changing so dramatically. And I've always coached people. I've always been the kind of guy that goes out and does something, proves to myself I can do it, and then always enjoyed leading other people to do it. So I became a PGI consultant, and then I wanted to work with Bob closely. And so I set a goal that I was going to be the top guy in the world, and I was going to go work with Bob Proctor. And that was April 2014. And by August 2014, he phoned me up and said, I'd like you to come work with me. And I achieved that goal. I had this goal on my goal card, and I was going through the program that you've taught a lot of people, thinking into results. I used thinking into results to get that result. I was thinking about it a lot. And that was the beginning. And then when I had that position for 8 years, and when we met in 2019, I was running his coaching division. So we had coaches and consultants all around the world teaching this information, doing just what you're doing. And then we met in 2019, and unfortunately, Bob passed just over a year ago, and I left PGI late around Christmas time last year, and embarked on my next season, which is around this message that's in this book I wrote, Mistaken Identity.
you touched on that just briefly about self-image and how important it is, the image that we hold of ourselves, and that it's, well, let's just call it, it's a bullshit version. It's all lies, really, isn't it? That we're trying to create success from. And in your book, I haven't read it yet because mine hasn't arrived yet. I'm expecting that you're going to tell us how to change that self-image that we hold inside there to real identity.
Well, I love the way you said it. So a couple of things. So when I started working with Bob, I didn't understand this concept of mindset, and mindset, the word is touted all over the internet and social media, mindset, but very few people really understand how to actually set your mind or reprogram your mind to have a better life. And I was included in that. And what I also didn't know was that this mind is a machine, and I'm the operator, and it directs my brain and nervous system. Well, I wasn't getting the results I wanted in certain areas. I was really struggling, and I certainly didn't feel very good about myself. So my nervous system, anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, worry what people were thinking, all this junk. And then, of course, people use the term imposter syndrome. Trying to act as if I was this person, and really struggle a lot with that. And I didn't understand that the self-image, or my opinion of myself, or how I view myself, it's what runs the mind. It's that program runs the machine. So I go, well, no wonder I'm struggling in certain areas. No wonder I'm struggling with, the emotional and physical elements of anxiety, depression, because I have a terrible self-image. I had a good self-image in some parts of my life, but others, man, oh man. And it's because of where I came from. As a kid, I had a very rough childhood. 60% of people struggle with some form of an adverse childhood experience. That's emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing violence, neglect, mistreatment. Well, I went through all that, right, as a kid. And so, of course, naturally, I didn't have a great opinion of myself. Now, that's one segment of the population. And there's a whole other percentage of the population. Listen, they grew up in a pretty good family, and the parents have stayed married, and everything's pretty good. But when you were little, you got programs into what I call, you develop a mistaken identity. You see yourself from a mistaken perspective. So when you're little, when you're a little baby, you arrive here and you're perfect, right? You're just filled with love and integrity, and you're very impeccable with your word. You coo and you cry, and you say exactly what you want. You don't edit yourself. You don't worry what anybody's thinking. You're just naturally expressive, And then you start to become an imitation. So you start copying the adults. So you move the way they move, you eat what they eat, you talk the way they eat, and then they get your attention. When they know they've got your attention, then they start drilling in the rules, the values, what's good, what's bad, what's right, what's wrong. And they start judging you. They judge you if you're good or bad based on how you follow the rules or learn to form the habits they want you to form. Brush your teeth, go to bed, whatever it is. And so then we get hypnotized and we get programmed. And for a lot of kids, the adults they weren't that good at it, and they weren't that nice. And so for a lot of kids, you could have nice parents and a good family, but they were critical, they were judgmental. You watch your parents judging other people, you watch them judging each other. They started judging you if you were good or bad or right or wrong, and then you started judging yourself. So very early on, you thought, you might not be aware when you were little, but when you were younger, you thought there was something wrong with yourself. And because you were being told, what the hell's wrong with you? Okay? Grow up. What's wrong with you? And so this conflict starts to grow inside. And now most people aren't aware of it, but you do fight back when you're young. You start to speak up and fight back and rebel, or whatever they call it. And because what's happening inside is you're watching the adults, and you're going, something's off track. You don't know what the right track is, but you definitely can feel there's something off track, but you don't have any power or control. And so you just cave. And so literally they just kind of form this image of yourself because you're judging yourself and evaluating yourself on other people's biases, rules, values, beliefs. So obviously, naturally, you're going to be off track with who you think you are. And for me, in more severe cases, the people that really suffered as children, you grow up and you struggle and you become an adult that struggles. And then you try to, unfortunately, it's in our nature as humans, we want to do better. We want to get better. We want to do better. We want more. We want to improve our lives. But now, there's a couple other external dynamics that have been at play most of our life and stronger than ever before now. So number one is growing up, you got attached to a real compulsion to conformity. You were forced to conform, right? Because of all the judgment, you became very concerned about what people thought of you, your fear of criticism. And now, in society, there's a real victim mentality, and it's perpetuated more than ever. And then you add on social media, the internet, and access to all this information. These smartphones here, they're not that smart, and we're not very smart using them. We have information just bombarding us, and we just can't seem to get on track. And so you end up with what I call this mistaken identity. And I think most people are stuck in a prison of their own making. I think they're stuck in prison because it's a case of mistaken identity. The real villain is your upbringing and your conditioning. And now the prison you're in is it's hard to break out because of, our current structure, social media, the mental health, and all this stuff that's going on. And it's more confusing than ever. And then people, all I want to do is I just want to do better. I just want to feel better. And I just want to be better so I can be good for my children and et cetera. And then you want to pursue a better life. But if you don't understand what this mistaken identity is and you don't get rid of it, in other words, if your self-image runs your life and you have the wrong image, you're never really going to get ahead in a big way, or you're never really going to be able to do the things that you really want to do. And that's basically what this mistaken identity is all about. So in my book, I have a very dark story, but I went from victim to victor, and I went public in 2001 in a newspaper here in Canada. It was on television, and people kept coming, well, how did you do it? How did you go from that to being successful? And I couldn't tell you how I did it. I mean, I know what I did, but I couldn't transfer it to you. And so for the last number of years, I've been working on trying to understand this and self-image. And by, of course, I wanted to create a formula about step by step how I did it. And so that the book is more like a handbook than anything. So it's got my story in it, but it's also like almost like a workbook format where I basically do three things: learn, unlearn, relearn. So learn, what is the mistaken identity? How did you get it? What is yours? Unlearn, so you can get rid of it, and then relearn, where you meet your true self. And then how do you install that correct self-image of who you really are, not by making somebody up. You become yourself. So I say, stop trying to fix yourself. Just learn to be yourself, and then life gets easier. That's kind of the basis of it.
When I first started this, I realized that I had the worst victim mentality out of everybody that I knew. And I ended up with depression earlier on in my life. And it was just something that you said there, like that when we look through the eyes of victimhood, there is nothing that you see that is good for you. Not nothing. There was a few things.
Yeah.
Most of the things you see, you think people are out to get you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, think about it. If you use the metaphor of being in jail, right? So you're in this prison and it's not your fault. Somebody did something to you, right? They hurt me. They did this. Like I just changed my perception of my story. I look at my story as a gift. I have no negative feelings towards my parents who abused me, the men that I was in this ring of pedophiles for 2 years, they sexually abused me. I got kidnapped at 15. Like I got rid of all of that because I just changed my view on the story. I let myself out of jail, but what I did for a lot of years, I dragged the victim mentality around, and it's very convenient and useful to be a victim.
Oh, yeah.
You
don't have to take responsibility. Well, I didn't have to take responsibility when I was a victim, so I didn't have to change anything.
That's right. Yeah. But it's no way to live. And I think we some people become aware of it, and you're just not living according to your nature. It's not in our nature to have a victim mentality. It's not in our nature to judge other people and judge ourselves. This is all unnatural behavior. It's no wonder people are struggling and don't like themselves or don't feel good enough about themselves or don't feel they deserve a better life, because they've been just taught to act unnatural. And no wonder you're in conflict. And it's not natural to live in conflict. That's unnatural. But we just learned to do it a different way because that's how we were programmed.
I don't know what else to ask you here, Doug.
Well, that's okay. Let me ask you a question. What about what I just said makes the most sense to you? Or in your experience, listen, you're very good at coaching people. I mean, you've done some terrific work coaching and mentoring people. You've used what you've learned on yourself. I've coached and mentored you over the years, helping you with your own businesses, and you're really good at what you do, helping other people. So from your experience, how does what I'm saying apply to the people that you've worked with or people that you've met?
For myself, mine was that I had to, like you said, just park this version of Polly here and go, okay, what parts are good? Which parts do I want to keep? And those are the parts that I don't really need to change. But the rest of them, like, I looked at what my weaknesses were, like what were the things that I was wanting to do, but there was something talking me out of doing it. So that was my weaknesses. So I just one by one changed them and said, okay, so I want to do this. I start talking to myself as if I've already done it and congratulating myself.
Right.
And then being grateful, like I never really got the whole grateful thing, but being grateful for everything that had ever happened to me because I was the victim back then, and starting to thank them for happening for me. Because even like I think too, even when I was younger, because of the self-image that I had, because I was a victim back then, and I have to take responsibility. I was creating what happened anyway, because it was only going to be in harmony with where I was at.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, that's one thing. What I also try to do in this book, really it was three things. One is explain this mistaken identity or this distorted view you have on yourself, because it also distorts your view on others and the rest of the world, your world and the world that you operate in. And then, of course, what I learned, by working closely with Bob and befriending him, this idea of, okay, how does this mind work that's controlling my brain and my nervous system? In other words, what I do and how I feel, and that the mind does operate according to certain rules and principles. For example, one of the things I talk about a lot in the book is stop looking backwards on the past. Your mind doesn't operate properly that way. Stop worrying about the future. You got to learn to operate it properly and live in the now. But you also have to recognize, I always use the example of driving a car. So if I want to take a road trip and I want to drive to a destination, that's where I want my life to, this is what I want my life to be. And I'm driving towards it. Well, if I'm a real nervous, anxious, driver that's not very confident in myself, I'll have a distorted view on my ability to get there. And I'll probably make some more mistakes than I would on normally. And so we don't operate this built-in GPS properly. The proper way to drive, and the way you drive your car now, is you get in the car, you program a destination, and the maps calls out your directions, and you just drive. You relax and you drive and you enjoy the trip. You might look in the mirror once in a while, but you just focus on where you're going. That's the way the mind operates. And then the third part of it is we just grew up with a bunch of stuff that just ain't true. And we operate according to these rules and biases that our parents pass along to us. And it's perpetual and it's generational, and it ain't working, and I mean, just look at the world. I mean, all the problems of mental health, like it's on the rise. And it's worse than ever because my generation, those 60%, were kids that struggled, grew into adult struggle, and then they had children, and then they raised kids that struggled. And so it's not getting better, it's getting worse because it's perpetuating and compounding, and I think we just all have a responsibility to get our act together. And one of my chapters is called Grow Up, because we're childish walking around in adult bodies. We've never really let go of the past, and we've been taught to judge, and we're still guilty, and we carry shame around, and like all that stuff is not meant to be dragged around in your life, but you were taught to do that. Your parents said, you should be ashamed of yourself, Polly.
Right?
Or your friend,
a fair bit.
yeah, totally, right? You should be. People don't even know what shame is. Shame is just an emotion when you become consciously aware of some guilt or some mistake or some impropriety, right? So it's useful. Like if I do something that's improper, shame is a useful emotion that I don't do that again. But I don't carry shame around for the rest of my life because of the mistake. But that's what we were taught to do. Husbands, wives, family, your mom is, when you were 22, Polly, and they bring stuff up from the past.
Oh, I was so good at that. My husband and I used to have the same argument, I think, every few months, and I just keep bringing the same things up over and over again.
Yeah. Well, another thing I learned about this machine, the mind, is about forgiveness. True forgiveness is forgetting. Now, nobody really knows that. And a lot of people would disagree with that. You go, you can't forget. And I go, you don't understand. You've just been taught that that's the way it is. True forgiveness is forgetting. And if you keep using your memory to go to the past, guess what? You're never going to forget. And therefore, you're never going to forgive those people or yourselves. You carry around guilt because of the past, or you carry around resentment towards other people because of the past. So if you live in the past, you'll never forget, you'll never forgive, and you'll be stuck your whole life. That's no way to live.
Yeah, so our mind can come from three places, yeah? The past, the future, but the most important is the present.
That's all you can control. Every one of us, I should say, I was going to say must, but it is a choice. You have an option, is you have absolute control over what you give your attention to, what you dwell on, or what you think about, right? We have a choice over that. I can dwell on my past. It was pretty lousy, made a lot of mistakes. I can worry about the future and dwell on that. But I'm a pretty logical guy. And when I learned that this machine only works properly if you dwell on the present, like I said, just drive. Where are you going, Doug? Oh, I'm going there. Okay, just pay attention. Keep your eye on the road. Just drive and operate in the moment. If you do that, you'll calm down. You won't carry any emotional junk from the past. It's just an easier way to live. And your mind, this machine, it automatically, like the GPS, it automatically gives you the directions and the course correction as you go. But as you're course correcting, you're not supposed to criticize yourself as you go, right? I'm driving along. I take the wrong turn. What do we go? Oh, you're such a dummy, Doug. I can't believe you took the wrong. And then your spouse kicks in. No, we're not supposed to criticize ourselves if we get off course. We're just supposed to course correct and get back on course. But we're critical. We're judgmental. We treat ourselves poorly because we were treated poorly. That happened.
There was one thing that you used to say to us when you were coaching us all, and it was, you've got to be firm on yourself or something like that, but you're not allowed to be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got sick of myself. I was operating as a victim. I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I mean, my way wasn't working. I'm not a dummy. I was doing some dumb things, And I said, enough is enough. One of the chapters in the book is called Enough is Enough. And I just decided I'm going to demand more of myself. And so I started to set these new standards. I'm going to be tough with myself, but I'm not going to be hard on myself. So I just demand more. I'm tough with myself, but I'm not hard on myself. I don't criticize myself anymore. Because if you wanted to do better, Polly, and I just said, I demand, come on, Polly, you can do it. I demand more of you. Come on, Polly, toughen up. And so then you embark and you go, yeah, you know what? I'm going to take control of my life. And then all I do is criticize you along the way. Well, how far do you think you're going to get?
Yeah. True.
Not very far, but that's what we do to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
then we expect everybody else to do it as well.
That's right. That's right. We're really just, we're hypocrites is what we are, but we don't have to live that way. Yeah.
So if somebody wanted to be tougher on themselves, Doug,
yeah,
what would be one thing that you would say besides no criticism, and how would they go about just demanding of themselves a bit more?
Well, number one is I would take an inventory of your life. And throughout this book, what I have you do is each chapter it's very short. It's 3 or 4 pages long. I write like I talk. I'm very direct with people. I got no time to screw around. I don't care if I piss you off. If I'm on the right track and I point in the right direction, I don't care if I make you mad. Okay. So I'm very direct. And so each chapter is only 3 or 4 pages. And then I give you an action step, a question to ask yourself, or something for you to do. It's not complicated, it's very simple. So I think you got to take inventory of your life and just look at it and go, all right, enough is enough. Like, just make a list of all the things that are going wrong and just make up your mind. You're going to take responsibility, because nobody's going to take responsibility for you. Nobody. Nobody's going to take control of the way you think. Nobody. And so I think you just got to go, all right, I'm going to set some new personal standards. This is the way I am going to operate my life. And then you have to give yourself a few rules. Like, listen, if you're not succeeding, you're not happy, you had standards set for you by the adults, and you could never reach the standard. They set a bar. You could never reach it. Never. If you ever got close, they moved it on you. It was constantly this moving target, right? And so you've been struggling with that. So just set your own standard, your own bar, right? And go, this is the way I'm going to live. And then demand of yourself that these are the standards. Because that's what happened to you and your kid. Your parents set a standard. They demanded you follow it. But their standards were screwed up. And they didn't really know you or understand you. They just programmed you. It's not their fault. Like, you can't blame your parents. Well, you can, but then you got to take responsibility. It's on us. And so I think you got it. There's such power in taking, like, I remember talking to Bob one day, and he said, Doug, I was dealing with a situation, and some people were, they were giving me a hard time. And he said, it's all your fault. I go, what do you mean it's all my fault? I just explained the situation. Doug, it's all your fault. You're responsible. I go, what do you mean? He goes, well, listen, you can sit here and complain all day about these people and how they've mistreated you, or you could take responsibility that it's all your fault. And I just go, that is very powerful. I did that with my story, right? I mean, I could have blamed my parents and the pedophiles and all the people that hurt me. I could do that, or I could just change my view, and I'm going to take responsibility for my life and grow up, stop acting like a child, take responsibility for your results, make amends, stop judging other people, stop judging yourself. You really can free yourself just by following a new set of standards and setting some new rules that actually make sense and actually work. Judging people, criticizing people, not a good rule to follow. It's not in your nature to do that. We learned to do that. Mhm.
When I did, because I did the Ho'oponopono teaching, and Dr. Hugh Lin, he always said he'd give himself a big bowl of ice cream the day that he could stop judging. I don't think he ever got it, because I think it's just inherently in us, but we have the ability, hey, to go, hang on a moment, stop. And in each moment we have the choice.
Yeah. So the very first chapter of the book's called Stop Judging, because I was really judging myself.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, people were judging me, and they had every right to, because of, some of the challenges I faced. And what I realized was I was just in the habit of judging myself and judging other people, because I was judged. Like, when I understood, it was very judgmental as a child, and I learned to judge myself. Okay, so I learned to do that. Okay, it's a habit now. And so what I did is I just flipped it around. I just started by stopping judging other people. So I just practiced seeing the good in people. And I just kept practicing it and practicing it and practicing it. Do I still judge people sometimes? Sure. But I catch myself and go, nope. I just keep getting better and better at not judging other people. And then that became the habit. Like, as you know, Bob, Bob just saw the good in everybody, right? He was the least judgmental man I ever met. I learned from him. And so I stopped judging other people. And then guess what? Because that was the habit, I stopped judging myself. And the more I stopped judging others, the less I stopped judging myself. And if somebody judged me, then I was immune, because I knew it wasn't about me, it was about them. And I didn't take it personally. And it happened really fast. Like, I'm not talking years, I'm talking weeks.
Yes.
Because you just it's a habit. It's just a learned behavior that we got sucked into. Now, many of you listening, you're going to judge me, and you're going to think I'm out to lunch, and you're going to just keep on judging people, and that's fine. But you will live your life in conflict. I know you can feel it. I know you can, because you're not operating naturally. Your nature is love and integrity. That's in our nature. And very rarely do people operate from that place. And then they go through life in conflict, and they go to coping mechanisms like drugs and porn and food and whatever else. And relationships fall apart, and they treat people poorly, and they go bankrupt, whatever, right? Anyway, that's my story. I'm sticking to it, and that's what's in the book.
Where can we get the book? Mine's still arriving. I can't remember where I ordered it.
Yeah, it depends on what country you're in, but you can go through my website. If you go through my website at dougdane.com, I've actually created a workbook that goes with the book. And so if you give us your email address, we'll email you the book right away. And then we just redirect you to wherever you want to buy the book, Amazon, or of course you can, go to your local store. It just came out Tuesday. So it's just starting to ship to stores, but, definitely Amazon for sure. Wherever you buy books, or your bookstore can get it in, likely. And so it's going to be available everywhere. So,
Doug, before we do finish, even when we start to upgrade our identity or our self-image, it can still be mistaken, can't it? It can still be not the true version. And that's why sometimes we need to do it a few times.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's such a good point, because it is, it's almost like a hit and miss and a stop and start. Because there'll be days where you just feel so good. Well, if you feel good, you're on the right track. It's the days that we don't feel good. And we're going to have days, we're going to be up and down, we're going to be off and on. And that's just normal. But we have this distorted viewpoint that controls our perception of situations, perception of ourselves, and it creates the judgment, or how we judge a situation, or judge ourselves, or judge an opportunity. And so it does take a little bit of time. But what I discovered was I spent years trying to figure this out. And Bob Proctor, when I met him, he said, Doug, it's so simple. Just let it go. I go, Bob, it's not that simple. All right, Doug, whatever you say. I go, no, Bob, you don't understand, because you didn't go through what I went through. All right, Doug, whatever you say, just let it go. And he kept drilling it, let it go. He said, you're making this so hard, Doug. It's so simple. You're making it so hard. Just let it go. Well, I did make it hard. It took me a long time. And I thought it was really complicated. And then I figured out Bob was right and I was wrong. It is really simple. It can happen really fast and you don't have to make it difficult. And that's why I try to do it in this book, was assemble it over 30 chapters. You can do it over 30 days or 60 days. Just do one little chapter a day, do the little exercise. And I just tell people, just let the book work on you. Stop trying to fix yourself. Yeah. Just let me undo the mistake that you have inside about you. And then you meet your true self along the way. You go, oh, you start to like yourself and you fall in love with yourself and you feel better about yourself, and just, it gets better and better.
Would you also say too that sometimes we have a mistaken identity on what success or successful is? Because I think you and I were talking about this just before, that we have a perception of what is good and what is bad based on what we've been taught our whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And success, what it means to each individual, is what's most important, not what as a whole society we believe success is.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about that earlier. The problem is, so in the self-help, personal development industry, for example, and with social media and the internet, everybody's touting, you can be anything and you can make $1 million a month and you can do this. That's not true. Some people can, right? And we're also in a society where you should be doing better and you could be doing more. And one of the chapters of my book is called Stop Shoulding on Yourself. You should. What you should do is discover who you really are. And then when you see that, then your viewpoint on what you want to do, what you really want in your life, you start seeing the truth about who you are. And then you start being truthful with yourself about what you really want. And then it's like the clouds clear and then you can see. Like, I never thought, when I met Bob 8 years ago, I didn't go to meet him so I could be doing this. I had no idea I'd be writing a book and on a mission to end judgment and just make people feel better about themselves. I never thought I was doing that. I could never see myself doing that. But as I started to meet my true self and chip away at all this crap, you start to see. And then you go, this is what I want. And then you believe you can do it because you're seeing through, clear lenses. Yeah. We have a very foggy view on ourselves and life and others and our gifts and our talents and our potential.
And how we like to put our beliefs onto others, hey?
Oh yeah, we're really good at that. But we learn to do that too.
Yes.
There's so many things we learn to do that just are plain wrong. So.
The one thing I love about Bob, and it took me a little while to make sense of, the first coach I ever had said, Polly, there's your model of the world and then there's everybody else's. And I didn't understand that for a bit. And it wasn't until Bob started reading My Mind is the Center. And then I understood, okay, my mind's the center of my universe and the center of my world. And it's the beginning of everything. Once I harness that, nothing else matters.
Well, listen, for the people that are watching, you should let this lady help you because she knows what she's doing. She's learned a lot herself. What I love about the people I got to work with Bob is that everybody, especially you, Polly, we're always striving and pursuing to figure it out for yourself. So you'd be a good guide. You're a good guide, like you're trying to summit Mount Everest so you can take people with you. Right? You're not just sitting at the bottom, go, hey, do this and do that. And that's it's interesting. All the lights come in. I got these beautiful beams of sunlight around me, but you're really good at that. And you keep pursuing and striving to be better. And you're a great guide at showing people the way. A great mentor has gone down the road and said, hey, come with me. I know how to get there. And so if you're listening to this, you should follow Polly because she's very good at what she does.
Thanks, Doug.
You're welcome.
And I look forward to getting your book and taking.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And if you get the book, I'd love to hear from you. You can go through my website and reach out. And the feedback on the book is really, really good. I ran a observational trial of 140 people that got the book early, and they committed to read the book and do the exercises over 40 days. And the change has taken place. There's one lady, I keep talking about it. She sent me a message. She said, Doug, I went through the book in the month of February. And she said, February 2023, I'm 37. No exaggeration, February 2023 has been the best month of my life ever. And then she listed all the stuff she let go of.
Oh,
And she's just, and we're getting all these stories and just people feeling better and more confident, and just it's really changing people's lives. And I didn't want to write a book. I never intended to write a book. I wanted people just to get the message that I understood, and the book became the messenger. So
good. Congratulations, Doug.
look at this. I'm in a halo now. Isn't that beautiful?
Oh, I know. I thought that before. Like there's the halo there.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
That's right.
Well, thanks, Polly. I appreciate you letting me come on. And for those of you listening, thanks for listening. And I hope I helped in some way.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.